Alright, so the last video I was making, I totally messed up. I had the sound all messed up, so let me start over from scratch, and I'll actually omit some of the crap I was going over in the last video. So anyway, this is going to be a Unity tutorial, and this is the first video in the series. So in this one, we're going to get acquainted with Unity itself, and just navigating the program, and getting around the interface and all that stuff, and some of the minor things, some minor features here and there. So first things first, what is that? Oh, yeah, I have my stream on. Okay, so first things first is getting Unity. And I had mentioned before, these videos are actually a redo of a previous channel I had started, which was specifically for a club at school. And so these are a little old, and not that old, but they're like 7-8 months old. So they were kind of specific to what we were doing at the time, but it just so happened that a bunch of people started watching it, and it actually helped some people, so I decided to do something a little more tailored to the general public. And so hopefully this will be helpful to everyone. So I'll be going over stuff a little more in detail, but at the same time going over more a wider variety of stuff. So for starters, let's get Unity. So unity3d.com is the website. Unity is free, but there's a paid version. Some of the features I will show you are from the paid version, but you don't absolutely need them. In fact, they're just a nice touch. So you go to the store at unity3d.com, and we wait for all that loads. Alright, so even though it's called the store, you can just get Unity for free right here. So you see the price is free. Then you go ahead and proceed, and you download it and register it and all that stuff, and you're ready to go. There are some differences which you can check out right here between Unity and Unity Pro, and same goes for the mobile versions, which are iOS and Android, which have their own separate license. But we won't be getting into that really at this time. So you can go over here all the differences in the versions. Mostly it's in the graphics and in the editor. So stuff like the profiler and external version control, stuff like that you don't get with the regular version. So anyway, once we get Unity, we start it up. This is basically, even though this is a project I had already started, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff in here. This is the interface. This is what you're going to be greeted with, in essence, right here. A blank gray screen. And the only thing a new scene has in it is a camera. So a scene, what is a scene? A scene is basically just a level in your game. It's going to contain a whole bunch of assets that you put in there. And it's like a self-encapsulated little bit of your game. And you can have multiple scenes in one game. So how you decide to use a scene as if it were a level or a menu or whatever, that's up to you. So for starters, how do we navigate the scene? So here again, we don't have anything, but if we want to navigate, there's a couple ways. If we hold the right click button and we use WASD, it will move like in the same way as a first-person shooter or first-person game. So we can kind of fly around the scene and look around as if we were flying through it. The other way is if you just hold the right mouse button and then move it around. That way will let you look around the scene. If you hold Alt and right click, you can zoom in and out. Or if you use Alt and middle click, you can pan around. The other way that you can look around is Alt and left click. This will let you orbit around an object. In this case, we're orbiting around the center of the focal point. So here we orbit around like that. Alright. So that's how you look around a scene in that's how you get around a scene here in Unity. And if you've ever used Maya, it's a lot like Maya. Actually, I think it's the exact same controls minus the first-person mode. So you'll see the way it's laid out here is we have a scene view, we have an inspector window, project, and hierarchy. This is customizable. So I'll show you what each one of these does, because these are the main ones, but there's more configurations you can have here. So for starters, all these controls I just showed you for moving around, you can just click on them up here. So this will kind of grab and move around. It's kind of like the hand tool in Photoshop where you grab it and move around the scene. Then you have, this is for moving, and these right here are for moving objects. So this is again just like Maya or 3D Studio Max in that you get these handles that let you move objects that are in 3D space. In this case, we have the camera selected. And if you press F, it'll frame that object in the center of the camera. So again, F, like if I'm here, I have it selected, I press F, it'll frame it. So you get these handles that kind of show you what they do. In this case, because we're in the move mode, which is the same as pressing W on the keyboard, this will let you move the object by grabbing the handles and just moving it in that direction. If you want to move it freely, and this can get confusing in 3D, but if you want to do that, you just click the center and you can move it around freely in 3D space. Next, if you press the E button or click up here for rotate, you get a different set of handles, and these basically rotate along that axis that you grab. So if you grab the red axis, it'll rotate on that axis. If you grab in any of the blank space in between the axes, it'll move freely in those axes. So that can get confusing too. And lastly, we have the scale tool, which is R. So these handles let you scale the object. In this case, the camera's not going to show it because it's not an actual physical object in the scene. But again, the handles do it, and then the center scales uniformly on all three axes. Alright, so again, Q is selection mode, which is moving around. W is move, E is rotate, and R is scale. So that's how you do that. And then let's see here. In your panels, like I said, you have your scene view, and this is your game view right next to it. So these are tabs that are kind of tabbed here. Duh. So you have the scene view and the game view. The game view is going to be whatever your game is going to look like. In this case, we have a camera, which is looking at nothing, because there's nothing in the scene. So when you go to game view, you just see a blank blue screen. You can't do anything. There's no game in here yet. It's just a blank scene. But when you have stuff, you'll be able to see through your camera and see what's going on and see the effects and all that. So next we have the inspector menu. In short, the inspector menu gives you all of the properties of whatever object you have selected. And I'll get into that in a second, exactly what that means, but for now you should just know that when you click on something, the inspector will show you the settings for that particular object. Down here you have the hierarchy, and the hierarchy is everything that's inside of your scene. So in this case we only have a camera, which is called main camera, and that's all there is in there. On the right side, in this particular project, this is the entire game project. This is everything that's in your game. So these are all of the assets that are in here. Now, by default, you won't have any of this. This is just a project I was working on. So there is a bunch of stuff in here that I put in there. But this will store all of that stuff for you. And moving something from the project into your current scene is as easy as clicking and dragging. So if I have a model, and I actually don't think I do. Well, there's a bullet prefab. So if I just want to drop it in there, I just literally drag and drop. And there it is. So this is a prefab I made. It's basically a particle emitter. It just spurts out some blood. Some blood mist or something. I'm going to delete that. So, and that's how you bring stuff in. If you want to bring stuff into your project itself, it's as easy as going to finding something you want to drop in there. So for example, I don't know. Let's see if I can find something. Images. Okay, well here's just a file. It's a PNG file. It's an image. You just literally click and drag, and there it is. The BG file is now in my scene, or sorry, in my project. And that's as easy. That's all it is for importing any asset into Unity. You literally click and drag stuff right into your project. So there's no complex process. The other way is you could go up here to edit and then import asset. Assets, import asset, new asset. And you could do it that way, but it's just as easy to click and drag stuff right into your project. In addition to that, actually this file here, or this folder that I'm looking at, is a Unity project folder. And this is the kind of the way it's laid out. So you have your assets library and some other stuff. If you go into the assets folder, this is going to be the same thing that you're looking at here. So actually let me open up the current one I'm working on to avoid confusion. This is what I'm working on right now. So it's the Unity projects folder, Sniper. So everything in my assets folder is exactly what's in here. So it may be arranged differently because this is by folder and then it goes by alphabetical order, but you see my A test material, it's right here, then BG, then blood prefab, etc. That's all the same stuff that you're looking at here. So I could drag stuff straight into this folder and it will update inside of Unity. And the same thing applies for if you're working, for example, on a 3D model and you have it inside of your assets folder. as you work on it in your other package, let's say it's a Maya or 3D Studio Max, it will update in real time inside of Unity when you tab back into it. So that's one of the cool things. It's really quick to work with Unity because you can iterate very quickly. So that's it for that part. Now, up here you have a couple different options in your menu bar. Again, you can create a new scene or open a scene, or you can just open a scene by double-clicking it. These are the scenes. This is what they look like. They have this Unity symbol and then their name. But you can also open them from here or create a new one, and then you can save them here. And this is for the project. Again, remember, this is the whole thing. So when you create a new project, you're creating a whole folder with a whole bunch of stuff in it. These are the projects I've used recently. When you're creating a new one, Unity has a whole set of packages you can import that are default. So they have a bunch of stuff like a character controller that's already made for you, and like particles, and a whole bunch of assets and textures. You can feel free to import those and use them if you want. And then here your build settings. So when you're ready to publish your game, you can just go to here and, like, let's say I wanna publish to web. I just switch over. Unity does some stuff, and then click build, and that's it. In this case, we'll leave it on the PC platform. And I could click build, and that would make an executable file for me. Next we have edit. This is pretty standard edit stuff. I'm not going to get into these. The next concept I want to get into is what different objects are in the world of Unity. So you have assets, which are anything that you've imported into Unity, and you can even create some stuff in Unity. Examples of stuff you can create in here are, for example, you can make folders inside of your project. You can make the 3 different kinds of scripts that Unity supports, so JavaScript, C#, and Boo. You can create shaders, which is again materials, prefab, which is basically anything that you want to be able to create multiple times is a prefab, and I'll get into these in more detail later on. Animations, materials, cube maps, etc., etc. These are all a little more advanced, so I won't get into these, but these are different things you can make. And then you can just import any file that is supported by Unity. If you ever wonder what kind of files are supported here, it's actually in the editor section in their website. So you go to asset pipeline. There's a list here of formats that are supported by Unity, and these you just drag and drop and you're good to go. So again, just make sure you check out the editor section, importing, and then you can see all the different stuff you can drag and drop. Next is game objects. Game objects is really the meat and potatoes of Unity. So a game object is anything that exists in the world. The most basic game object you can have is an empty, which is literally just a position in the world. So in this case, there's no, even though it has handles, if I deselect it, there's no visual representation of that. It's just a position in the world, literally. And it has a name, and that's it. So this brings me to the next part. Every game object is made up of several components. In this case, this game object has one component, which is a transform, and that's just its location, its rotation, scale. But let's say I make another game object. Let's say I make a cube primitive. Okay. Now this one is a little different. It actually has a few more things on it. So it does have a position and all that stuff. And you can see if I change the position, it'll update in real time up here. So its position is changing according to where I actually put it. So this is, exactly what you see here is what's represented here. So you'll notice there's a few more things here. Like I said, there's a cube mesh. So that's the actual visual representation of it. So that's a component. And then it has another component, which is its renderer. So this is what displays the cube and its material. The collider is a physics thing. So anything that touches with it that has a collider will react to it in a certain way depending on what you're doing. So these are there by default on a cube primitive, and all of the primitives really have the same stuff, except the colliders are a little different. If you go to, actually I made a second collider, or cube, let me make a sphere. It has a sphere collider instead of a cube or box collider, but really you see a lot of the same stuff. There's a mesh renderer. So components, again, components are just a series of things that, they're basically, they add functionality to whatever game object you have selected. And the inspector is going to show you all of those components in here, in the order you put them in. So a few examples are, you already saw the mesh, and the mesh is just literally just draws the object. Same with and the renderer draws it. So the mesh puts it in there, has all of the information for the mesh, and the mesh renderer draws it. Particles, you have all these different components if you want to emit particles and animate particles and all that.